Hi, Leroy.
Hey, how you doing?
Pretty good, you?
I'm doing all right, I guess. I'm working on uh I don't know what I'm working on. I'm just here. Um Jim is Jim is in the hospital, so we've got
What's the matter?
I have no idea. All I know is he I was told he was in the hospital. That's all I know.
I'm sorry to hear that.
Yeah. Um so he asked to if I could do the second meeting too, so we're going to try it. Make sure, see if it works. I don't think it would be a problem. But I put a link to the second meeting in the chat room. So you
So
probably
we don't use the one that's in the email
yeah,
from several weeks ago.
yeah, that one's an old one because that was him his meeting. So I had to set up a second meeting. So
Okay.
but you might want to copy that before the end of this meeting, because once it closes, it closes. And I I didn't get an email from him today or anything, so I guess that's the best way to handle it is just put the link to the second meeting in the chat box.
Okay.
I guess.
I just grabbed it and opened another Chrome session, so I'll go to that when we
Yeah,
uh, have to
yeah, I'm kind
pivot
of
over.
kind of winging it a little.
So, what hospital's he in? Do you know?
I don't know. I'm guessing, since he lives here in Monroe, I'm guessing the atrium, but
Hmm.
nobody really. I mean, they didn't really say anything about anything.
Well, sorry to hear that.
Kind of wish, you know, kind of wish I knew more because I know people will be asking, but I don't.
Well, hope he's going to be okay.
Yeah. So Gail says the way she worded it makes it sound like something, but she says stable, but will be there a few days.
Is he? So the email came from him specifically.
Well, Gail sent me. He texted me 2 or 3 days ago, and then Gail sent me the email and said just to
Oh,
make sure
so
you got it.
he's been in the hospital 2 or 3 days then.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Hmm.
When did I get that? This email October 5th. So it's been 3 days.
Okay. So that explains why we didn't get a meeting announcement. I take it.
I think that explains it.
Okay.
So
Well, I wish him well.
yeah, I'll make sure everybody, you're getting used to the idea of just jumping in here. I don't know if other people are waiting for the meeting announcement or whatever.
Well, what I would do is go to the most recent email, which has a link in it, and just grab that.
Right.
So what I'm doing is not magic. It is just simply um,
Well, yeah, but I think you've realized that at least the first link is always the same.
um, so is the password the same as in the past, or do we have a password or what?
Um, the link that I put in there It's got the password included in it.
Okay, let me.
But honestly, I don't know what the password is. It was a generated.
So the password is embedded in that link then.
Yeah,
So we don't need to enter a separate password then.
we shouldn't need to enter a separate password.
Okay.
Um,
Alrighty.
at least,
Well, I hope it's nothing serious.
yeah, yeah. I like I said,
Problem,
I really
problem,
don't know.
problem with going to the hospital is you're as likely to catch something there as you are if you stayed home. More likely.
Yeah, I'm guess I wouldn't go to the hospital unless it was something very very serious. You know, for that reason, because there's sick people at the hospital.
You know, right? Well, I know we're part of the Kaiser system in California, and whenever I get a prescription, I'm always worried about going to the pharmacy because the waiting room in the pharmacy is, it's just a petri dish, you know,
Yeah, yeah,
of particularly in the wintertime when people have got all kinds of flu and other kinds of stuff. So, yeah, that's just reality, unfortunately. I worked for Kaiser for about 3.5 years, and um, we were we were required to get various inoculations and an annual TB test and so forth and so on.
right,
Um, the influenza vaccine was not an option.
right,
Basically, you got it or you were no longer on the staff. So
right, right.
they were pretty serious about that. Um, what is that
That that
2BZ9E?
that would be the password if it should ask you for one.
Oh, okay.
I did. I went into my Zoom account and grabbed it. It's one of those automatically generated.
Yeah, which are impossible to memorize.
Yeah, well, I would never. I use a password manager. I only know one pass. Well, I don't even know that. I've got it wrote down. It's a password that's
Yeah.
you know, but, but I don't know.
So,
I don't know any of my passwords. Honestly, I know I know like the password to the Raspberry Pi, and I know the password
yeah,
to my desktop computer, but that's it.
yeah. Well, we'll see if anybody else finds their way here.
Yeah, well, it could be a short. It could be a short meeting.
Yeah, that's true.
Well,
I had back-to-back Zoom sessions for school last night, so
okay.
um, the students there have picked up on this distance learning thing.
Yeah.
They don't necessarily like it, but they picked up on it very well. But the faculty is,
Not so much, huh?
yeah, it's the classic thing. How do you learn to use a computer? Well, you ask your grandchildren. Yeah,
Right. Well, I mean we kind of same way. I showed Patty how to do a Google call, a video call.
yeah,
The grandkid, I mean, she's 5 years old. She went, "It's face mode," and she was like, "I can see your face."
yeah. Well,
So the grandkid picked it right up. I was like, "Yeah." Patty was like, "Why do I want to do that?" Because you can actually talk to her. She can actually see you, and you can actually see her.
yeah. Well, the thing is that human communication is a large percentage of it is not linguistic. It is, in fact, um,
Visual.
visual, body language,
Yeah.
facial language, et cetera, et cetera. So, you know,
Yeah. I agree.
and kids intuitively know that, I think. Uh, um, we're so used to oral and written communication that by the time you're 20, I think you're brainwashed, is what it boils down to. So,
My dad, he is 83, 84 now.
yeah.
Um, and he gets around on a computer pretty well. But he has looked at me and gone, "You really understand the stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah, but I look at like my grandkids, the 10-year-old can run circles around me on half of this stuff."
Yeah.
And I said, "It's just I grew up when computers were, you know, they came out and they were in the home. You grew up in a time when a television was a big deal."
Well, actually, we didn't have a TV in my house until I was 13 years old.
Right. Well, that's what Dad said. He was like, there was one TV for the whole entire block, so
Yeah.
everybody would go over to the kid's house and watch TV. They would have like TV parties. And I'm like, well, yeah, but I grew up with a computer in the house, and now if you look at what the grandkids have grown up with, they've cell phones and various and sundry tablets and other stuff, and it's stuff that I haven't. Well, I mean, I use it, but it's stuff I never really grew up with. So,
Well, frankly, this my cell phone, my mobile device, if you will, is about 10 to the sixth times as powerful as the mainframe computer I used in grad school in the
yeah,
60s. Get this, the mainframe computer had a total of 64K bits,
okay,
not bytes, bits. And you had to get special permission to use all 64. They had something called upper core and lower core.
right,
And the run of the mill user, this was all done obviously by Hollerith cards. You had these great stacks of
right,
punch cards. The average user only got to use the lower 32. The upper 32 required a special dispensation and a nighttime run.
okay,
The daytime, the upper core was occupied by various administrative stuff that ran in the background, and you had to get a special dispensation to run the whole thing.
wow,
And I was doing numerical integration for nuclear physics models in those days, and that was I would have loved to have something even like my original IBM XT that I got in what was it, uh, 82 or
hmm
83, someplace along there. I would have loved to have something like that because it would have run the integrations much, much faster. But so it's hard to appreciate how much stuff has changed in our lifetime.
yeah,
So,
yeah. Well, that was pretty much, uh, you know, that was pretty much my point. Was uh, my 10-year-old? We've got a smart TV, and it's got the pictures of the Hulu and YouTube and all that. And he goes up and he's trying to touch it, and he goes, "It's broken." And I said, "No, it's not. It's just not a touch screen." And he goes, "What's that, Papel?" I was like, Okay. I guess I guess you're young enough that everything's a touchscreen now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, um, I worked on some of the initial touch screens back in the 80s, and they had all kinds of strange schemes.
Yeah.
They weren't really touch screens. What they had was an array of IR LEDs along the vertical axis
Yep.
and across the top, and then they had sensors opposite that.
Yeah.
So really, what the electronics was sensing was the position of your finger above the screen. The screen itself, um,
Yeah. Yeah.
actually, the initial ones we worked on were actually CRTs. So unless your fingers were magnetic, they didn't do anything at all with the CRT.
Yeah.
Um,
I had I still have a couple of those old touch screens that had you can see it. You can see the array. It's like
yeah,
a plastic mesh that's over top of the screen,
yeah.
and it's got those arrays may be a little bit different. I don't think those were LEDs. I think those were
Well, these were infrared LEDs
yeah,
and infrared sensors.
yeah,
So you had on one side you had an infrared LED. It was actually 805 nanometer LED. It was gallium arsenide,
right,
and then on the other side it was a silicon sensor.
yeah.
And so when you stuck your finger in there,
It,
it broke the beam,
the X and the Y
and
coordinates.
then you had the same thing across the top and the
Yeah,
bottom. So, and they weren't very high resolution, by the way. I mean, they were, I don't know,
the one
maybe.
I've got a couple of them in the shed that um, I don't think they're LED. I'm not sure what they are, but there's definitely an array in them. You can see it in the plastic mesh that's like over top of the screen. And when the
Well,
screen's on, you don't see the mesh. You don't see the.
well, some of them were, some of those were capacitive, and
It,
they would sense your finger
yeah, this one might.
capacitively.
These might be capacitive, but they worked. They worked similar to that. They got an X and a Y.
Where, what time frame were these?
Mm, late '80s, early '90s, mid '90s, maybe.
Yeah, yeah. We were working on this a little bit earlier than that in the mid '80s. Um, I was working for an R&D lab. It was actually a contract R&D lab in California, of course, and we did a lot of development work on various things that, and it was fun, but the technology today makes that look pretty primitive to say the least. So
Sometimes it's just nice to look back at some of that old technology and go, oh, that led to this, which led to this, which is what we got now.
well, the other thing that it's nice is how much easier it is now than it was then.
Right.
I think about when I was in graduate school. Obviously, we didn't have the internet or anything like that. This was the 60s. And when I had to go do research and check out papers and so forth and so on, you went in the library stacks and you pulled out the phys revs or electrochemical society revs or whatever, and you went through and read pages and pages and pages of references. And of course, by the time they were committed to paper and ink, they were already,
Obsolete.
well, they were months old. Okay,
Right.
they were months old. So
See, I remember high school. pretty much how we had to do research. The internet was, uh, it was, we knew of like internet, but nobody had it. It was
Yeah.
still, it was still for the universities and uh, education and that kind of stuff. And when I would go over to the university and got on their computer, it was all text. So
Yeah.
you could go and go for stuff, or you could do that, but there wasn't Google. You couldn't just Google something and have it spew out all this information. You had to
Yeah.
sit there and hunt through Gopher, and
Yeah. So it was all DOS based then.
well, it was all text based. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I remember uh, had CompuServe, which was not the internet. It was a BBS, a bulletin board system.
Oh yeah. Yes.
You paid extra to be able to send email out to the world,
Yep.
and but when they opened up the email, when they said, "Okay, you can email people," that was like, "Oh my gosh, that is a big deal."
Oh
I'm
yeah.
not just stuck to this system anymore.
Yep.
And AOL bought CompuServe, and of course AOL is kind of sort of still around, I guess.
It is. I still see people, generally older people, but I still see people who have AOL accounts. Mine expired, around 2000, I think. But the other thing I remember about AOL is about 3 or 4 times a month you'd get a CD or
Yeah.
yeah, CD.
Well, that's how CompuServe was. You would get a floppy or a new CD or something every
Yeah,
few months, and they would say it's important to update. And
yeah,
almost every time you would update, you'd get some slightly new feature. But they were the first ones. Well, they probably weren't the first, but they were among the first ones that I can remember that actually had graphics, where you could do some searches and actually get graphics of stuff.
uh-huh,
And I was like, okay, that's kind of cool. Of course, that was all on a monochrome monitor
yep,
with an 8088 machine working at 9600 baud, maybe. So the
yeah.
graphics were not even, it was impressive at the time, but it's nothing compared to today.
Well, I remember in the 80s I was at this R&D place, and a number of us had purchased our own PCs. In those days, it was pretty much IBM. Nobody was buying apples simply because of the cost, and it was before the graphics user interface. I mean, it was strictly text based, and so my boss bought us, each of us, a modem. Each of us who had their own personal computer bought us a modem. And I remember the modem was um, 1200 baud, and this was the latest and greatest, and so most of them were 300 or 600 baud. And of course, this was strictly telephone lines. Strictly, it was not network or anything else. Now, I remember also I put a network in. I installed a network in our office space there, and it was the original fat cable Ethernet. I don't know if you ever saw it. Had a yellow cable and was about slightly smaller than a garden hose, and it was it was not a network in the sense you went from computer to computer. It was a network in the sense you had this mini computer, small mainframe computer,
Okay.
and then everybody was on a VT100 terminal.
Okay.
So you were really not going over a network. You were going over dedicated serial lines from
Yeah.
this thing on your desktop to the um, to the central computer. And then when we got PCs, we got some sort of an interface device would allow us to talk to the mainframe also. So um, yes, the days of iron men and wooden computers.
I I don't know. I don't remember. I don't remember the fat Ethernet like you're talking about. I remember. I remember Token Ring. I remember.
That was not fast Ethernet. That was slow
Yeah.
Ethernet.
I remember seeing a couple of. I think our high school had Token Ring set up in their computer lab.
Yeah,
It looked good.
this was DEC VAX
Facts.
computer.
Yep, that's
Uh,
what the university used when I would go over to the university and get computer time. They had maybe 100 terminals.
hmm
You would you would share time on the vax,
Yep.
and
Yep.
they wanted to know how much time you were going to use because they needed to know how many people they could let in the door.
Well, they also in those days they charged. May have been funny money. You may have not actually seen the charges, but from department to department, they charged X bucks a minute and
Oh,
so forth and so on. So,
well, I was not aware of that, but why would they tell me that? I was just a kid. So
well, I mean, I remember it because I had departmental budgets and so forth. I had to worry about.
right, but yeah, I remember sitting on the vax and talking to other people next to me, and I remember IRC, you know,
hmm
Internet Relay Chat. When that came around, I was like, "Oh, this is cool. We can talk to people all across the world." And they're like, "Yeah, but check this out." And they showed me a mud and a moo.
So, do you have any idea what version of Vax it was? It was a Vax. It was not a PDP.
No, it was a Vax. They they kept they kept calling it the Vax, so I'm assuming it was a Vax. Um, but no, I have no idea what version it was.
You know what OS they were running?
Some Unix
It
system.
was a Unix. It wasn't a VMS.
Mm, was it VMS? It was VMS. Yeah,
Okay.
it was
Yeah,
Unix.
that wasn't.
It was
There
Unix.
were there were two OSs that they put up on the early Vaxes. One was Unix, and one was
That's
VMS.
that's what it was. It was Vax VMS. But I
Yeah.
know.
Well, VMS was a Vax operating system. Actually, it was a digital equipment operating system back in the days when digital equipment still existed as a separate entity before they were purchased by Compaq and then purchased by HP.
Right. This That's what it looked like,
Ah, yes. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
and that's what our terminals look like.
Yeah, that was probably a VT100 terminal. Green screen.
Probably, yeah, yeah,
Those things had a notorious reputation for burn in.
yep.
If you left the same image on the screen, the same text on the screen for a period of time, I remember at one point in time we had done a startup out of this research organization, and so I had an office both at the startup and at the and as the research organization, and I I got to the point where I was spending less and less time at the research organization, more and more time at startup, and so for a couple of months, my screen sat there with the same thing on the screen, and that image was permanently burned into the phosphor of
Yeah.
um, and I think that was the reason why people started, when you had a graphics user interface, started using screensavers so it would change the image so it didn't burn in on the CRT.
The
They
CRT.
have them today, I think, primarily as a security thing. But you,
I've had a couple of my LCD monitors have some burn in on them.
really,
Yeah, it's not
I didn't.
it's not horrible, but you can definitely see it when you turn off the monitor.
Interesting. Well, the
So,
CRTs were awful in that
oh, the
regard.
CRTs were horrible, but
Yeah, they.
the I use a screensaver just because I have seen them do a little burn in, and it's not bad. But it's enough to be annoying, is what it is.
Yeah, I remember the last CRT I had at at home. I don't know. This was. I still had it in, I don't know, 2002, 2003, whatever. And this thing was probably close to a 30-inch screen, something like that. And that thing about broke my back to get it into my office. I mean, I bought it used. I got a really good deal on it. It was one of these, you know, here's this really good deal. But I think it cost me $100, something like that.
That was
But it weighed a ton. It was unbelievably heavy.
I had one of the auctions that I went to. Um, they were getting rid of old computers, and uh, I bought some TI machines. I don't remember what they were, but they had 30 plus inch CRT monitors that were connected via fiber cable.
Really?
Yeah, and they were awesome. Um, had 200, 300 foot of fiber cable with them,
Wow.
and you could hook the keyboard hooked to the monitor, and everything was done over this fiber cable, and they were
So that
turnable.
that hooked into the computer.
It hooked into the computer, and it came with I think three monitors, three of those 30-inch monitors, and it was running some sort of Unix. It may have been like a VAX machine or
Hmm.
VMS, but it was some sort of Unix like system. And I got them like for 20 or 30 bucks, and put them on eBay and sold them to a guy in uh, where was where was that guy from? Um, anyway, he was far away, and he came and picked them up, and he was thrilled, but he paid like $500 for the stupid things. And I'm like,
Wow.
yay! But he knew he was like one of those persons that was this. It does this and it does this and it does this. Do you have the password? No. Oh, I don't need it. It's all right. And it does this and it does
Yeah.
this and it does this. It was some
So you
sort.
sold them not only the monitors but also the computer.
Yeah, yeah. I sold him everything because I think I only paid like 20 or $25 for a whole kit and caboodle, and I got two of them. I got two of these things and like six monitors, And I was like, okay. But I put them on eBay and somebody knew what they were. And I said, I'm not going to ship these things. They're huge and they're heavy. You're going to have
Yeah.
to come and get them. And he came from Alaska. That's where he was from. He came down.
Came from Alaska.
Yeah. When he got here, his van was completely full of computer equipment. And he had said that he had went on eBay and he was just shopping for old computer equipment and he was going back to Alaska.
Wow.
Okay. So he traveled clear down here and across the country to pick up old computer equipment.
That's you, I guess, right?
Oh, that was me. Gail just emailed me. Let's see what Gail says. Uh, okay, she says um, Jim is in rehab now and has to work on it, but he's reasonably good spirits and improving. So I still don't know. I still don't know what's wrong with him, but uh,
He's in rehab. That sounds like he might have had a coronary or something.
it does, doesn't it?
I know my dad spent a lot of time in rehab when he had his first heart attack. So she said he's in rehab or he has to go into rehab.
Jim is in rehab and has to work on it, but he's in reasonably good spirits.
Good.
So
Well, that's good.
still doesn't really say what was wrong. I don't know what's wrong with him. So
Yeah. Well, that's too bad.
I'm just emailing her back um, just to let her know.
I'm assuming that he has some kind of a blanket email list that he sends the meeting announcements to.
Yeah, he does, but he's never shared it with me. And that's what I asked her probably a half hour before the meeting or so. I'm like, oh, is there is there any way to that you can do it? And she's not sure if she knows how to do it either. So,
Well,
but he does. He's got a big list somewhere. I'm just not sure where it is, or he's never given me access to it. So,
there are services available that you just put everybody's email into and it automatically.
yeah,
Um, I have some social ones that are for things like parties and so forth and so on, where you
yeah.
just select the invitees. So I think there's one called Evite that I have
Oh yeah.
access
Well,
to,
I
and
was thinking about like Mailchimp might be might be all right. Um, that lets you make that lets you make a mailing list and stuff, and it gives
and
people
not get busted as a spammer.
yeah, and it gives people the option to opt out if they don't want to get the email anymore and that kind of stuff.
Uh huh.
Um, which I know I'm pretty sure his list is pretty long, and there's no real option to opt out of it.
Well, I think that the official membership list for the club is several hundred people long, I
Yeah.
believe. Um, and you have to have some kind of a special arrangement in order to email that many people simultaneously with the same message, so you don't get
Whack,
pigeonholed
yeah,
as a spammer.
whacked with the,
Remember
yeah.
when back around 2000, 2001, I was teaching some courses at uh, get this, a local Chinese university in Fremont, and I would try to email all of my students from a class at the same time with assignments and so forth and so
Right.
on. This is before Canvas and all that stuff, and periodically I would get uh, blacklisted as a spammer. Um, so uh, obviously you need some way around that. When I send the classes at school now, it goes in some kind of a through some kind of internal.
Hmm.
Uh, I don't think I could email them all from my personal email address, but my school email address takes care of that somehow or another, uh, and I can send to the class list or whatever.
So I think that that's like some of these mailing list deals. Like for the free account, you can get 2,000 contacts, which would be more than enough for our list. But I think what they do is instead of emailing everybody at once, they email like
Now
each.
they parse them out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what I think they do.
So what projects you've been working on recently?
Well,
Still working on the hero robot?
not as much as I was. Um, I lose interest in that every. I'll work on it for a while and then I'll put it to the side and work on it a while and put it to the side.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of those. That's one. It will never be done. I'll never ever actually finish that project.
So this is a career, not a project, right?
That's just the way it is. You know how some of these projects are.
Oh yeah. Well, you hit boring phases in them. You get saturated with it, and
But I this little M5 stick. Um, it's connected to this. Basically, it's a temperature sensor,
huh.
and it's sending its information out to. You know what APRS is in the ham radio world?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's doing. It's sending the weather stuff or the temperature stuff.
Now that's just a broadcast. That doesn't go to specific. Um, that doesn't go to specific individuals. That's a broadcast kind of a thing, right?
It I could send it specifically to somebody if I wanted to, but yes, it's just kind of a broadcast kind of deal. So at 1800, which was like 11 minutes ago,
Yeah.
says it was 80 degrees Fahrenheit with a 29% humidity, and my pressure is all wrong, so ignore that. But
Now this is inside your house or outside your house or what?
inside, inside the house. So, and that's the house.
Mm-hmm.
That little dot should be over here, but for whatever reason, it decided that it wanted to be in the backyard.
Well, has it got GPS built in?
No, I came to this map and I took the GPS location and stuck it in there.
Oh, so you have to. manually enter that. This is
Yeah,
not
yeah,
a GPS sensor that automatically picks up location.
right, right. Um, but it's not transmitting over the air either. It's just going right into the system, and it does it. It goes to sleep and then it wakes back up every 15 minutes and sends a new update. And this thing has been on for 4 or 5 days now with just this one. There's one 18650 in here, so it's been doing really, really well.
So how long will it go on a single charge?
I have no idea when the before I was putting it to sleep, it lasted like 3 days. But now that I'm putting it to sleep, I don't know. I haven't seen it die yet.
Well,
And
you're not
then
using a lot of bandwidth. It's not a very big data packet.
nope,
So,
no, it comes on. Um, it's got a little LED on it that comes on for half a second or so, and then it goes back off and
hmm
it goes right back to sleep. So no, it's really not using a whole lot. Its heaviest usage is getting it to connect to the Wi-Fi.
so what is the microchip in it?
Um,
Is it a
so the M5s are ESP32s. So
ESP32?
yep,
That's a lot of horsepower for temperature and humidity.
yeah. Oh, you know why I used it? Because I had the little hat that sits on top of this thing, and because I had the battery that would connect to it. So
I see. Okay.
uh, it just seemed like a good thing.
So it's temperature, humidity, and pressure as well?
There is, and it's got a compass in it, but there's no real reason to use the compass. So
But it does pressure as well, though.
yeah,
I see.
yeah, and uh, it said that the pressure was 99 millibars, which isn't right. It's should be closer to 1,000, I guess.
We
Well,
should have passed 40 minutes like 5 minutes ago.
that's because we're only by ourselves. There's only two of us.
Oh. So it's unlimited below a certain head count? That's
If
interesting.
somebody else shows up, then we're going to get kicked out.
Okay. Well, how does that work? They reset the clock as of the time you go over the limited number of people, or it's from when you start up?
I think it's from the time that you start, because they ask you what time you want to start your meeting and what time you're going to end your meeting.
hmm
So I said 6:30 was when we were going to end, which is they only give you hour blocks, but they limit you to 40 minutes. So I said the second meeting will pick up at 6:30 and go to 7:30, which is too long too. But um, so I think if somebody else showed up right now, we're over our 40-minute limit. I think they would just kick us out
I see.
because the meeting started at 5:30,
Yeah, interesting.
and we were actually in the meeting a little bit before 5:30. But that's all
Yes, we were.
right.
I'm
So
gonna write down that password. I've got the link, but I need to make sure I've got the password.
well, it's just going to be you and me again, Art, because nobody else apparently has gotten. Nobody
Either they
else
haven't
knows.
figured it out or whatever.
Nobody else knows. Um, I've been working on this thing again too.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
So the guy who originally made it accepted my pull request. So my script is now officially part of this thing
That's on GitHub.
on GitHub, and he uh, he had some ideas about using the rainbow part of it
Mm-hmm.
um, to display the ISS as it comes up over the horizon and falls back down over the horizon. And I'm like, that's a cool idea. So
Now, are those surface mount LED chips or what?
yes, yes they are.
Okay.
And I don't know if you can see it or not. There, right there, there is a little tiny. I think that is probably a little tiny like uh,
You're talking about the
Atmega.
flat pack?
Yeah, I think that's a little tiny Atmega 328. So I
Oh,
think this.
really?
Yeah, I think this thing's actually working more like an Arduino.
Huh.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that because I
And
can't.
it's powered by a LiPo battery or what?
No, I just power it off of the Raspberry Pi, off of the uh, you know 5 volt. Let's, let's get the big eye. No, I can't.
What's the purpose of the hoop?
It set it
Oh,
like
oh, it's a stand.
it's a stand.
Oh, cool.
My the grandkid thinks that this is a metal detector.
Oh, really?
I don't know. She's 5. I can't help it. Yeah, I can't read it. I can't read it even under.
Can you read the inscription on it?
No, no. There's something there. I can't read it though. She took this one day and she had it all out like this, and she was going beep 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 beep. So what are you doing, Thea? It's my metal detector, Papple.
Okay.
I guess it looks like a metal detector. I guess.
So how many grandkids you got?
Uh, 5. Uh, technically 6. One of them, one of them didn't make it.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. We got. Let's see, Aiden, Lulu, CJ, Thea, uh, Corbin, and Seth. Yep. So there's 6.
So this is a result of how many kids?
3.
3.
Yeah, they're the stepkids though. They're not really. So the
Oh,
grandkids
okay.
don't the grandkids don't know that they just think they're the grandkids.
I see. I see.
The we watch you probably remember a month ago or so Thea was over here, so we watch Thea all the time.
Uh-huh.
She's the one that she'll play with the robots. She'll build robots with me.
Uh-huh.
She'll do all kinds of crazy stuff. So
So she's 5, you said?
she's 5. Yeah.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah. Yeah. When she gets a little older, I'll get her into soldering stuff, and you know,
Yeah. So so you're her preschool basically, are you? Or
so, oh, that She was born 3 days after the cutoff to get her into preschool this year, or to get her into regular school this year. 3 days.
Uh-huh.
And we argued and argued and argued with them, and they said, we've got to make a cutoff somewhere. And I'm like, yeah, I guess so.
So she would have been gone into kindergarten this year?
She should have been in kindergarten this year. Or if her birthday would have been
Three
3 days
days earlier?
before, yeah, she'd be in kindergarten.
When is the cutoff these days for a year?
It depends by the city that you live in. So the city can set the cutoff. Um, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was like literally 3 days before her birthday. And
It's interesting. I was born um, back in the days when they had half years. So you could be a full year student, or you could be, uh, in other words, you started in the fall or you started after Christmas.
right,
Uh, Started first semester, started second semester. And I had a cousin who was, I don't know, a month and a half older than me. And she started the, um, the year before I ended up starting. And I could have started in the mid year, but my dad had been a mid year student through high school. And he said, there is no way you're going to be a mid year student. And there were still a few. When I went through high school in the late 50s, there were still a few students straggling through who were half year students. And by that point in time, I'd figured out what he was talking about because they had all kinds of problems getting classes
right,
because they had to either come in the middle of a class or their schedule was just crazy. And they were phasing them out when I was in high school in the late 50s. I don't think after 1960, at least I went to the Columbus public school system, and I don't think that in the Columbus public school system there were any mid-year students after 1960. I think that was the end of it.
right.
Um, but I remember specifically this cousin of mine who was, I don't know, not even 2 months older than I was a year ahead of me in school. So yeah,
Well, it's actually what Patty's a little worried about was with Thea is she's going to be so much taller and so much older than
yeah,
her grade. And I'm like, she'll probably be
they adjust. You know, if you look at the kids about the time they hit adolescence, all the girls are tall and all the boys are short. you know, the girls
yeah,
typically go through that growth spurt before the boys do, and then um, you have the tall girls
yeah, yeah.
and the short boys, and so that sorts itself out in a couple of years. But uh,
I don't. I, Thea's an only. She's an only kid, so she gets it in her mind that if she wants something, that's the way it's going to be.
yeah, right. She's assertive.
And that may actually be a problem when she gets in school, especially if
Yeah,
she realizes she's older than everybody.
yeah. Well, but on the other hand, she got to learn to share. So
Well, that's we're trying to get her. We're trying. We're trying to. She knows her ABC. She knows her numbers. She knows a bunch of stuff, but sharing is not It's not high on her.
Is not one of them. Does she interact with her cousins at all?
Yes, and before COVID, when we would go to like a restaurant that had a playground or something for her, she was
Hmm.
fine with all the other kids. So I'm like,
Mm.
I think that kids will, you know, there are kids, alpha kids, and there aren't, and they'll just figure it out. You know,
Well, they adapt,
yeah,
assuming there's not any untoward pressure. They adapt,
yeah, they'll just
and
figure it out. So I don't know if we're going to get cut off here in a few minutes or not, but do you want to try the second meeting or
well, can we open it up yet?
I we should be able to.
I can pop over to the. I have the link, and I have the password, so I can pop over to the second one.
We could at least do that and see if I can do two meetings back to back. Maybe we could solve some of the issues with everything anyway. So
Okay.
let's do that. I will. I'll see you in a few minutes.
Okay.
All right.
Take care.
I'm trying to make it stop. Ah!